All right, everybody, welcome. Come on in. Happy you're here. I'm Edwin Eisendrath, and I'm with Michael Tomasky. Look, the New Republic is essential. It's unblinking journalism that not only holds our government and our leaders to account, but explores and explains the ideas that give shape to a better America than the one now on offer by the MAGA movement and this dreadful president. That the New Republic is able to produce such important content all the time, by the way of a magazine or online or via podcasts, is to a great extent down to the talent and drive of its editor, Michael Tomasky, who is also the author of 5 books. And he and I have been talking on my radio show for several years, but thanks to Substack and Lincoln Square, this is our first face-to-face conversation. So, Michael, welcome, and it's so nice to see you.
Yes, absolutely. What an added bonus.
Yeah. All right. So I have, truly frightening topics for us to talk about today. But I thought before we go down that road, there's some positive stuff that you guys write about. So I wonder if you would tell everybody about the Heroes of Resistance series, because I just love that.
Thanks. I'm glad you did. This is the cover package of our October print issue. We still do print issues. And I guess I conceived of this sort of back in the late spring or early summer. And I just thought people might need a shot in the arm. And so we have assembled from staff writers and from people I would call regular outside contributors to TNR, little profiles of 14 people who we think, have not just said the right things, but have taken some risk, have resigned their jobs, have put themselves on the line in some significant way to oppose what's going on with this administration. And I have to say, I think we came up with a really interesting and eclectic list of people. Most names people wouldn't know, a few names people would. Most notably Ketanji Brown Jackson, but of the 14, I would say 10 anyway, are probably close to 9, probably close to unknown. And,
I didn't know.
Yeah, and it's and I think it's just there's a lot to admire, and of course they stand in for so many others across the country who are nationally or locally doing important work.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's also infectious, in a time when the president is down to tell us there's nothing we can do to stand in their way. There's nothing we can do to stop them. The idea that people are standing up and being successful, that kind of courage gives heart to everybody. So I thought that was really important.
Yeah, thanks. I hope people will come to tnr.com and read some of these profiles. I'll just, if I may, 2 examples. Mm-hmm. The one that I wrote profiled a man named Ryan Crosswell and his colleagues from the Justice Department who quit over the Eric Adams situation. Mm-hmm. This is 500 outrages ago, but when they dropped the charges against Eric Adams, and 11 attorneys quit. Astounding thing. And, Ryan became noted because his letter of resignation went public and got published in the Washington Post and went viral. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good one. I don't know. There are a lot of really good ones. There's the Melissa Gira Grant, one of our staff writers, profiled a Native American woman who holds vigils outside Alligator Alcatraz. Greg Sargent wrote a piece about Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife, and on and on and on.
It was just, I think people should read it. I think it helps us in the fight we're in to know that there are people fighting this fight and doing it, with courage. I loved, you had one line in the Ketanji Brown Jackson piece that I loved. It said, I got to actually read it. I wrote it down over here. Jackson has perceived those cases accurately and emergency break glass moments, and she has broken the glass.
We called her, that was written by Harry Littman. I'm sure your people watching us see Harry on television all the time. Mm-hmm. And he is our our senior legal correspondent. He writes a column for our website every other week. And I asked him to write this piece on her, and we put the headline on it, The Moral Conscience of the Opposition, I believe we called it.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of has been. She's really stepped forward in very admirable ways, necessary ways.
Well, yeah, look, anybody who believes in democracy who's sitting on the Supreme Court is sitting in a very dangerous place, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about, let's head to the less good news. And I guess I want to start with the free press. You're in the media business. Look, arguably, the Skydance Paramount company exists today because Paramount forced its subsidiary CBS to install a Trump administration monitor in its newsroom and to fire Stephen Colbert. And then yesterday, Disney complied with Trump's order and forced its subsidiary ABC to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. And Nexstar and Sinclair, the two biggest owners of television stations all across America, piled on and participated in that. And ABC, ABC and Nexstar have pending or anticipated matters that will require the government approval. So they wanted to buy favor for that. Sinclair is just like Fox, so they didn't care. Yeah. But now, for a large chunk of the United States, Michael, Donald Trump is the assignment editor. He's the head of HR for newsrooms. He's the man who selects the owners who will operate these businesses on his behalf. Like, what could go wrong?
It's astonishing. I read a lot of stories about Viktor Orban of Hungary, and how he took over the media and handed high-profile media properties to his cronies. And I spent a lot of time last year thinking, well, okay, I understand this, but how would this work in America? How can Trump do this? It's not like he can just, change the board of directors of the New York Times or whatever. And he can't, of course, but it turns out that he and his people are very clever about the levers of power that they do have. And of course, I should have thought of this. I'm ashamed that I didn't. It's all wrapped up in the media as corporate conglomerates. It's all happening, not all, but a lot of this is happening because of the media company's corporate interests. He's getting CBS. Barry Weiss is going to be in charge of CBS because CBS wanted that merger. Its parent company, Paramount, wanted that merger. And this is happening to Jimmy Kimmel because Nexstar wants a merger. So it was, we've lived in a country where this merger mania has, I think that phrase was coined in the 1990s. It's been going on for a long, long time in the media business and in other businesses. But, it's never that we've never had an administration that looked at it from such a mercenary perspective that they could turn this into their own self-interest and eliminate their enemies.
Yeah. I mean, you think of it as a problem of fascist governance, but it's also a problem of modern capitalism in America.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, when Edward R. Murrow was on the air, CBS News wasn't, I guess it was originally a part of Paramount, and then it was not. And it was its own thing for a long time. But, that wasn't how capitalism worked in those days. There weren't all these mergers and number one, and number two, media companies saw in those quaint times in their news divisions a public trust, and they didn't want to mess with their news divisions very much. CBS and NBC and others, eventually ABC, which came along later. And smaller, even radio networks, like, I don't know, whatever, Westinghouse Radio or whatever. Right. The news division was something that was a little bit sacrosanct and wasn't supposed to be a victim of the vicissitudes of business. But that went out the window, a few decades ago, and now it's we see very clearly its profit margin and over news, And now under Trump 2.0, it's even worse. It's not just profit margin, but there is now an expectation that profit is to be gained if you're aligned with the people in power.
Yeah. So it's enormously dangerous. Americans can still find the truth, but they have to look for it. It's, the stuff that comes at them every day now through broadcast and previously through much of social media is propaganda. And it's very hard to, it's sometimes, one of the biggest examples is, last week after the death of Charlie Kirk. And let's just start here. Both you and I believe that there's no place for political violence in a democracy. Both of us think it's terrible that this guy got killed. But look, he was murdered. He wasn't martyred. There's a difference, right? He was murdered. People get murdered in cities all over the country. This one was particularly horrific in that it was so public and it was an execution. But it was a murder. And the MAGA crowd wants to make it a martyr. In the same way you see sometimes in the Middle East, people carrying coffins down the street to rally the troops, to get the street angry. They have really worked this. How dare you not fly? Are you flying the flag at half-mast outside your office? How dare you, right? They got the flag police out. What's going on here?
Well, on one level, I feel they can make him a martyr all they want, and I recognize that there is sincere grief on the right over this murder, assassination. My Facebook feed, Edwin, is full of people from my sort of past life, my youth in Morgantown, West Virginia, and a lot of old high school friends. Some of whom are liberal, many of whom are conservative and MAGA. And I was reading their reactions, and there was a combination of rage at the left for doing this. And then there was some genuine grief of people who were like really crying that day. And, that's not me, but that was their reaction. So they could make him a martyr in that sense if they want to, and name things after him and so on. What is problematic, obviously, is using this event to change the standards for free speech, to change the definition of what constitutes hate speech, as Pam Bondi said, and to use this as a wedge to police language in such a way that people are literally getting fired for going on social media, and not just journalists, just regular people at their jobs. I see this on Blue Sky and Twitter as well as I do. I'm sure people, who just work in offices at random jobs, but were liberal and didn't like the things that Charlie Kirk spouted and stood for, went on social media and said that and have been fired. That is insane and dangerous and scary.
And this is from the crowd that used to say, well, the left is censoring people. I mean, if you don't, they would say that he didn't put his pronouns in his email, so he got fired, which I don't think anybody was ever fired for not putting their pronouns in their email. But this was what they would say. Yeah. And now we know this. And J.D. Vance, one of the most appalling creatures in American politics, went on the air and he's saying 1 in 4 people on the left think political violence is a good idea. And he's saying that like it's a statistic that exists, right? We know that very few people on either side think political violence is a good idea. Thank goodness. Right. But so he's saying a quarter, that would mean, if there were 2 more people on this call, one of us would be saying off with their heads and mean it literally. That's just nonsense. But it does foment this kind of violence. It does raise the numbers, at least on the right, because they're the ones saying this stuff.
Well, Vance is just full of lies, as so many of them are. His appearance on his turn as a guest host on the Kirk show a couple of days ago just lie after lie,
Lie after
and we see that they now have the power to reinvent reality. So there was this study, the Cato Institute made us all aware of this in the last couple of days. There was a study in the Justice Department that said in the last 20 years that far more violence came from the political right than from the political left. I think it was 6 times.
Yep.
And that was an official government Department of Justice study. And now it doesn't exist. It was on the Justice Department website, and now it's not.
Gone.
Now it's been taken out. It's how Stalin, the famous the concept of the commissar vanishes. That people who were disfavored by Stalin were removed from official photographs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was done with this study.
Yeah, there was a joke. Chairman Brezhnev, how many comics, didn't you like? And he said, 4.5 labor camps full. Right?
Yeah. So we're so they just say things repeatedly that are the opposite of the truth, and they get repeated on their so-called news propaganda stations, and half the country comes to believe it. So
I had a different sense this time.
People I went to high school with, are nice people, and they sincerely believe this because this is what they hear.
Yeah. Well, the last time everybody believed him, we had January 6th. So a lot of people believed in January 6th. So I think this one worked out a little differently. I think I heard something a little different, and I hear it now in MAGA. I think they're learning a terrible lesson from the killing of Charlie Kirk, that they can't make America unsafe for some without actually making it unsafe for all. I don't think they ever dreamed this would come after them when they boil up the anger like this.
Yeah.
And now, if you and I got that lesson, what we would take from it is, well, we need to turn down the temperature everywhere, right? But they're, of course, misreading the moment and thinking they can just burn it all down. But I do think they're inciting real danger right now.
Well, they want, by instinct and temperament and reflex, a more authoritarian society, a more ordered society, right? And a less democratic, small d society. So they'll take any event they can and tighten those screws as much as they can. And that's what they're doing with the Kirk murder. And they're making a more authoritarian state.
Yeah, it doesn't make order. I mean, I can tell you this from the ICE visits that are going around right now in Chicago. It doesn't make it more ordered. It makes it more chaotic because people fight back. People are not interested in being told what to do all the time, told what to think all the time, told what not to say all the time. That's just not in our nature. So it doesn't create order. It creates chaos.
Yeah, it does. And I think we're in for a lot more.
All right, let's turn and talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington. Right now, the government is on track to shut down, right? They have funding bills they need to pass, or a continuing resolution, or stopgap funding bill, I guess, are the paths they could go on. And I think the Democrats have decided this time that they don't really want to help fund the fascist government, that they need to really get some reversal of course from this administration to participate.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to get it. So they're going to say to the Republicans, you got to do this with only your votes. What's going to happen?
Well, okay. First of all, we think back to March and the other shutdown threat of the second Trump term. And we recall that there was a lot of talk then, and that Chuck Schumer caved at the last and released the votes to give the Republicans enough votes to pass another continuing resolution and keep the government open. There was a lot of anger about that, obviously.
I was one of them. furious.
There's a lot of
because it
anger
wasn't
on
a clean bill, Michael. It
Yeah.
included that extra piece that allowed these emergencies to go on forever.
It did, yeah. At the same time, I was sort of sympathetic to the argument that, shutting Congress down would give Trump and Musk more power. Anyway, be that as it may, that's water under the bridge. So now we're here. I think Schumer has heard that the lesson of that a lot of people in the Democratic base were angry. So, I guess I'd make 2 points. As we know from history, the party that's perceived as being responsible for the shutdown suffers some blowback. And, so there is that risk for Democrats, but I don't think that risk is what it was. People point to the Clinton shutdown. This is a totally different country. There's only 4% of swing opinion out there, and we're more than a year away from the next election. By the time November 2026, nobody's going to be voting on what happened in September 2025. That'll be long forgotten. There's only 4% of the swing vote. They can do plenty of things if indeed they lose it, they can do plenty of things to make it swing back. So that's one point I'd make. The second point is that there's still the worry, whatever stand Schumer and Jeffries take, there's still the concern that particular individual Democratic senators and House members are going to vote for it. And so Schumer could be drawing a firm line in the sand, and, a few Democratic senators could say, well, sorry, it's in my interest to vote for this, and they vote for it, and House members too.
Well, what that says to me is, hey, if you're listening, call your senators.
Yeah.
Call your House members. Don't let them cut a deal that you're not part of,
Right.
to sell you out. That's what I would say to that. I think it's in their interest not to play ball. I mean, Republicans have enough votes. If they want to pass it, maybe they pass it on their own. I don't know. But
yeah, I agree. I think they shouldn't play ball this time. And I think that they should say, and, it's fine to talk about healthcare subsidy cuts under Obamacare. I think that's an effective issue as far as it goes. But I think they should just be going a lot farther, and they should just be saying things like, look, this guy's using the agencies of the executive branch to destroy this democracy. And we're just going to stand here and say no. And if we pay a political price, we'll pay it. We're just going to stand here and say no to this. And I bet that would rally. I bet they'd get 3 of that 4% on their side.
I think, Michael, around the country, Democrats, and I'm thinking of governors and local elected officials in state legislatures and mayors, they all understand this. The last crowd to get in line here is the ones in Congress, because the Democrats in the country get it. I mean, my governor in Illinois is out there, but he's not alone. Governors understand what's at stake. They feel it. Elected officials in states are feeling the cuts already. Mayors are feeling it most dramatically when they I'm thinking of some state legislators I talked to who represent farming parts of the country that are just, suffering terribly from this administration.
Yeah.
There's a big coalition to build.
There is
opposition if we have the courage.
I'm glad you mentioned farmers, because soybean farmers don't know what's going on.
No. They do know what's going on.
Yeah.
They can't sell to China, their biggest market.
Right. So it's and I would love to see Democrats. One problem is so few Democrats represent farm areas anymore. Sherry Bustos out in your neck of the woods did, and she was one of the last.
But for a while, Democrats made the mistake of trying to be too smart. They said, look, we're not going to win there, so we're not going to waste our resources there. But that's over. We're now trying to run everywhere. And that even if we don't win the first time, it means we're asking. You'll never win if you don't ask people for your vote, But if you gather them together and start telling them things they don't hear from the other side, it makes a difference.
It does. You have to go compete. You have to show up, and it's going to be a long road. But this reality where you can't even you can't begin to think about electing a Democrat in 60% of the country is poison for the Democratic Party, and they've got to do something about it, and they've got to go to those places and talk to those people. And this is a small thing, but I looked it up. The last Democratic presidential nominee to use the word farm was Obama in 2000. I think it might have been 2008.
Well, he launched his campaign, as you know, in Iowa.
Yeah.
And a lot of us from Illinois went over there to help.
Yeah. Right. So Clinton and Biden and Harris didn't even mention the word farm. And the last one to actually speak a sentence or two about farm policy instead of just mention the family farm was Al Gore in 2000.
Well, one of my favorite United States senators was John Tester, a real farmer. And of course, he got thrown out by the MAGA movement in his state. But he was doing the right stuff. Hey, we only have a few minutes left, and I want to get your take on America changing sides in a war. The country's not on Putin's side.
Right.
The country is still on the side of where we've been for 100 years. We want to stand for democracies, and we don't think somebody should send their tanks into another country in Europe. And Donald Trump has switched sides. And even this week, as Putin continues to do more, Donald Trump's now saying, we're going to delay weapons to Ukraine, and they can't use them for certain purposes. He had 2 summits, one with Putin and then one with Europe, and out of it came 0, right? 0. 2 big, I've never seen that ever in my life. And then we have this horrific thing in Gaza, where Gaza City is being taken off the map. And what have we learned about Donald Trump? I can make peace on day one. There was a meeting in the White House. The Washington Post reported this, and they gave us the PowerPoint, for gosh sakes, where they're going to privatize Gaza, give it to a company that Americans say, look, we paid for this war. We deserve it. We are going to turn Gaza into the Riviera and make our money back. Are you kidding me? This is Donald Trump and Putin's war. It's Donald Trump and Netanyahu's war, and he wants a Nobel Peace Prize.
Right.
Where am I wrong?
No. It's repulsive. And I get a little upset at the media too, at times like this and on narratives like this, Edwin, because, Zelensky comes to the Oval Office the second time, not the first time. The first time was that disaster. Comes the second time, it's all smiles. European leaders are there as well. And the media kind of falls for it. And, a few people leak about, and Witkoff talks about security guarantees, and they're 90% done. Well, there aren't any security.
No.
That was, how many weeks ago was that? That was 2 months ago or more, and there are no security guarantees for Ukraine. Trump wants minerals and precious minerals and resources. There's no question about that. Probably wants to figure out how to make money on himself. And, all his stamping the table about Putin, it's just not followed through by any kind of substantive action. And there's going to come a day when this war is going to end, and Trump's going to be on the side. It seems to me almost certainly likely of helping Putin get as much of Ukraine's territory as he possibly can.
Yeah. Well, okay. We are in the last couple of minutes. I want to go back to where we began, because I think the New Republic is fabulous and really important in this era. And with the collapse and capitulation of much of the media that most people used to rely on, more important that people know how to find you, know how to support that kind of stuff. Same thing with, by the way, Lincoln Square, where you and I are talking right now. Yeah. These different forms of media are becoming an absolutely essential way to keep Americans informed of what's going on and give them ideas of what to do. How do they find you?
Thanks. TNR.com. That's what we call ourselves in shorthand. So it's www.tnr.com. And it would be great if you would also subscribe. You can still get the print magazine if that's your thing. I hope it is. You can also subscribe to the print version digitally, so it's just sent to your inbox in the middle of every month. We have some really terrific things coming up. I don't want to give away too much, but a piece by a high-ranking Biden official, not so high-ranking that like it's a household name or anything, but a Biden official writing about his experiences in the Biden administration. A very, very interesting piece. And we have packages coming up on immigration and other things. And then on a daily basis, we keep track of breaking news, and we write what I hope is good, smart analysis of what's going on. And yeah, we're not a corporate anything. We're owned by one man who, God bless him, underwrites us, and he's got our values and we've got his. So, we're not going to be subject of any kind of corporate takeover anytime soon.
Thank you, Michael. And thank all of you for joining us and being part of this conversation.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks.